Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Soulful Conversations. I am your host, Sharika Matthews, life coach, relationship expert, and the creator of Feminine Success Mastery.
Hi, and I am your host, Kim Mason. I'm the executive director of Women Cultivating Greatness. And at this nonprofit organization, we help women who learn differently to level the playing field and to be more successful in their lives. So, this week, Sharika and I are going to be talking about fear. And this is something that, all of us have experienced. And I kind of came up with a psychological definition of fear. And it is, and Sharika, I want to get your opinion about this. It's an intense emotion aroused by the detection of imminent threat involving an immediate alarm reaction that mobilizes an organism by triggering a set of physiological changes. And I'm sure what they mean by physiological changes, when you are afraid, your heart starts racing, your head starts pounding, and it's just fear, like you're in danger. And so what do you think about that, Sharika?
I think that definition is pretty right on. Because fear, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, fear is a basic human need. And a lot of us don't really understand that it's a human need, and it is actually built into our psyche, built into our nervous system to keep us safe. And so when you experience fear, it doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It just means that your body and your mind and your psyche is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Now, I did see a definition that was slightly different than what you said. It is a bodily response, a mental response to imminent danger, regardless of if that danger is real or imaginary. And that is where we get stuck. Sometimes we are afraid of things that aren't even real or hasn't even happened yet versus being afraid of things that's right in front of you. Like I was using the example earlier about, excuse me, prehistoric times where our earlier humans, they had to defend themselves against saber-toothed tigers and sharks in the oceans and stuff like that. So they had to rely on their physiological, their psychological response in order to detect the fear and to respond appropriately. So when you say that when you fear something, your heart beats faster, things begin to happen in your body, that is so your body can get the right resources to the right part of your body, like your legs, to start running and not stop running until you're able to get out of danger. And you've
Oh,
heard stories. Yeah, I remember this was a while ago, a story of, I want to say, actually, it was a car that had rolled over his son, this man's son. And it was an accident. The car got out of gear, and so it rolled over the boy. And somehow or the other, the father was able to lift up that car with his bare hands and get his son away from under the wheel. That was the psychological response you're talking about. You're able to do things. Your body's able to respond in ways to remove you from that danger.
yeah. Do you think that that's like a part of the fight, flight situation? Like whether you realize you have to fight or you have to run or you have to flee, you know?
Yes, those are the options you have as a result of the fear. So when you experience fear, when you see that there is danger ahead of you or near you or about to happen to you, you quickly decide whether or not you're going to fight for your life or fight for whatever it is you need to fight for. If you're going to freeze and everything just, you just stand there, or are you going to run? And
Yeah,
that translates to not just a saber-toothed tiger sitting in front of you, right? That translates into the fear you feel from starting a business, the fear you feel from applying for a promotion at your job, the fear that you feel, um, I don't know, from dating again or getting married again. The same type of thought process, the same type of response you have to a saber-toothed tiger, a lot of us experience that in our day-to-day lives.
that's true. That is really true. I agree with that. And yeah, and I was, when we were talking earlier, I was saying that I have read where they said that the word fear not is in the Bible 365 times.
Mm,
That has never been proven from my research. It's not really proven. Now, fear not is in the Bible quite a bit, but just the word fear is like in the Bible over 500 times. So I think that that's something that's important for God. And I also think that when it comes to life situations,
mm-hmm.
losing a job, getting a divorce, making things that will cause us to be fearful and out of our elements, that we need to remember that, um, God is there for us, for one, and that He protects us from fear, you know.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us too to understand how fear has become such a stronghold in our lives, right? We're talking about fear because I've heard people say that we live in a fear based society, from the way the media feeds us news to just real events happening in the world, like multiple public shootings and things like that, the earthquake that's happening, all kinds of things are happening in our world that causes us to feel some level of fear. But why is it that it has become so normal for us that we don't even recognize it half the time? We begin to make decisions subconsciously that's based in fear and not based in faith. We begin to make decisions subconsciously that's based in fear and not based on facts and not based on what's real. We're basing our decisions and how we move and how we go about from that place of fear. And when you are in this state of constant fear, you have the mentality of a victim. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier about our responses to fear, the fights, the freeze, or the flee. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, when you see yourself as a victim, you're either going to run, but most likely you're probably going to freeze. You're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to be able to think straight. You're not going to be able to make the best decision possible in that moment because you're so overwhelmed with the emotion. And that goes back to your definition, the distressing emotion of fear. And then when you break it down, that's really all that fear is. It is a distressing emotion. It's not something tangible. It's not something you go out and fight and punch. It is an emotion. It is a chemical release in our bodies. And we have to learn to regulate that chemical release so that we can make the best decision that we can in that situation.
Oh, that's it. That's it. And I think that when you talked about, we live in a fear-based society, going through the pandemic and what we've gone through the last couple of years, that has really increased the amount of fear
Yeah.
and increase, and now we're worried about food prices with eggs being $6.70 a cart and all of that. It can be very overwhelming. And that's where it's so important that we have self-care and that we are, like you just said, monitoring our thought processes so that we can make the proper decision and don't just be going, ah, and then
Yeah.
just make a decision and realize that that was the incorrect decision.
Yeah. And not just making decisions, but being able to reframe the story. So, what I mean by that is when you experience something that you're afraid of, whether it's real or imagined, there's a story associated with that. So, for example, let's talk about eggs. Oh my God, eggs are $6.90 for a carton of egg. And the story I'm telling myself is that's too expensive. I can't afford it. That means I'm gonna eat. I'm gonna starve. There's gonna be widespread famine. Our brains begin to go down the rabbit hole because of the story we tell ourselves.
That's right.
So we have to reframe our perspective. We have to shift the way in which we look at things, shift the way in which we interpret things so that we don't see ourselves as a victim, but we see ourselves in a position to affect change in a way that keep us happy, healthy, and whole.
Right.
And
And
so
one, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, use an example of the eggs is yes, eggs are $6.90, but that just means I'm not going to have an egg omelet every morning. I'm still going to buy my eggs. I'm still going to enjoy the flavor of eggs. I might even invest $1 more and buy the free range and no antibiotics, no hormones added type of eggs because now eggs have become a delicacy for me. So I'm going to buy that carton of eggs. I'm only going to eat 2 eggs a week. Or if I have a family, guess what? Everybody get one egg once a week, and that'll carry us through the month. I just shift the story I'm telling myself so that I don't have that victim mentality. I have the mentality of I just have to shift the way in which I operate, shift the way in which I speak, shift the way in which I look at things so that I can still live and enjoy my life.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. And you and I are definitely on the same page, always when it comes to mental health and protecting our thoughts. Because just like when you have one negative thought, if you say another one and another one and another one, it'll start snowballing. And then your mind will shift. Oh yeah, I also don't have this. I'm not making the kind of money I want to make. My business is not working. And by the time, like you said, go down that rabbit hole, you have put yourself in some kind of depression. But
Right?
what I do when this happens, and I start thinking about my wins, talking about with women cultivating greatness. I said, well, I had 650 names on my MailChimp list. Now I have 1,000. More people are opening my emails. And so when something goes wrong, I think about those things that go right. And what I do, what I call it, is protecting my mind. That's
Yeah.
what I want to. I want to protect my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And having that mindset of gratitude is something that really should be a part of our daily lives. I think you and I talked about this before. I'm working on revising the journal that I published where it has a list of all the miracles and answer prayers and your gratitude list so that you can write in there every day that you do your journaling, but also so that when you have those moments where you're feeling unsure, you're feeling uncertain, and you feel that little bit of panic begin to rise up from the pit of your stomach into your chest, so you get that little knot in your throat, right? You can
Right.
go to that, turn a page, like, oh, okay, let me read this. I can't think straight. Let me just read what I wrote 2 days ago about being grateful for the 600 people on my list, being grateful for the programs that I have in plan right now. It's going to help so many women overcome, learning differently. You can go back to that list
Yes.
and to help you refocus on that. But in addition to that, there's another thing you can do as well. And one thing that I do believe that will help us, and I want to use this word cautiously because I don't really think that you can overcome fear 100%. There's this word fearlessness. And I believe that you can fear less, but it's not actually healthy nor desirable for you to just have no fear. Why? It goes back to what we talked about earlier about it being a basic instinct in life. Sometimes you need to have that fear to keep you safe. You have to have that fear to know that you can step out in the middle of a busy road when the green light is on and you have 18 wheelers coming your way. That is not a smart decision. Your fear is going to stop you from putting your foot out in that road.
Right.
So you have to have a healthy dose of fear. But when fear becomes immobilized, when it immobilizes your thought process, it immobilizes how you show up. Then that's where you need to take a step back and ask yourself, okay, is what I'm feeling, is it something real that's happening right now, or is it imagined? Is it something I'm afraid is going to happen in the future? Then
Right.
you're able to either take immediate action for what's in front of you or make a plan. You see,
Yeah.
fear exists because it's imagined. Fear exists because it's an emotion. And if you can give it facts, if you can give it information, if you can give it a plan on how you can work around it or overcome it in the moment, then it takes away the sting. It takes away its power so that the fear may still be there. But what's empowered is you. What's empowered is your faith. What's empowered is the knowing that you have the skills, the tool set, and the Holy Spirit working within you that will allow you to move in spite of that fear that's present.
Right. And that's mindset. What you're talking about is mindset.
Yeah.
And I think most people have heard that statistic that 85% of the things that we worry about never come true.
Girl,
We
right?
build a story in our mind about something that's going to happen, and then it turns out this 85%, and this is a study that was
Mm-hmm.
done with thousands of people. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And so
Right.
you've spent all that time putting the story behind it, replaying it in your mind for something that turns out totally different. But I
Right.
wanted to read one of my favorite scriptures. It's from Isaiah 41 and 10. And it says, "Fear not, I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God, and I will strengthen you. I will uphold you with my right hand." And so that's something that I read when I feel, fearful or scared. And it is part of my self care treatment, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And
Yeah.
so I want to kind of talk about um, ways to eliminate fear. Um, and I'm not talking about the lion, us protecting ourselves from physical fear, but how to eliminate the fear up here. And I know you've said some things, kind of think about our victories, think about the things that we could be grateful for. Can you think of anything else that you do
Yeah.
to kind of not eliminate, because we can't eliminate it, but to, get us through it?
Right. So one of the best exercises that I like to do, and I recommend this to my clients, is to write down the worst possible outcomes that you're afraid of. So for example, you want to apply for this job and you're afraid that you're not qualified enough. So I asked my clients, okay, so what if you did apply for this job? What's the worst that could happen? Number one, I get rejected. Number two, I actually get the interview and I bomb the interview. Number three, I get the interview and I get the job, but then I don't know what I'm doing in the job. So those are the three worst possible outcomes that you can experience if you go for this, if you confront this fear. So once you identify those three things, then next to each one, how can you overcome that? So the first fearful outcome is that you would get a rejection letter. Okay, you got the letter, but it did not affect your current job. It did not affect your paycheck. It didn't have any other negative impact on you except you got your feelings hurt. Is that really a non-starter? No. So you don't really have to be afraid of that, because you receive fear, you receive rejection in the past, and you've lived through it. So you
Right.
have a 100% success rate of living through rejection. So that's no longer, I've taken away the power of that fear. Number two, you get the interview and you bomb the interview. So what can you do to overcome that? Well, then you can go and sign up for interviewing technique classes. You can sign up for an online class. You can get a book. You can hire a coach. You can do all the things you know that you need to do so that you don't get in an interview and bomb it. Or number three, you get the interview, you ace the interview, and you get the job, and you start working that job, but you don't know what you're doing. Well, how do you overcome that? Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to study to make sure I understand the skills that I need to be successful in
Yep.
that job. I'm going to take night class. I'm going to get a mentor. I'm going to read and study all I can so that I become the expert in the field. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to be transparent and let people know I need help in succeeding in this job. And you keep pushing through that way. So for each fear that you have of a particular outcome, you take away the sting by creating a plan for it. Now,
Yep.
it doesn't mean that that things are going to go exactly as planned. But what that positions you to do is that when you are faced with that fear and that undesirable outcome happens, instead of going into panic mode, guess what? You train your brain to think about solutions. So you're no longer a victim, you're a conqueror. You're no longer a victim. You are in charge of your life, and you're not reacting, you're being proactive, and you're able to keep a straight face. You're able to keep a steady heart and keep a steady face so that you can face that fear confidently and move forward from it without having it hold you captive or hold you hostage and change how you view yourself. So that is my best strategy that I share with my clients and do for myself in order to overcome those fearful feelings so that I can move in spite of that fear.
Yeah, and I do the same thing. And for each way to kind of diminish the sting is that I write three things I could possibly do for each one. And what I learned that's most important is to write it out,
Oh,
a piece of
absolutely.
paper. And, I don't even like do it on my computer because it's
Mm-hmm.
something about pen to paper that really works for me. It may, and it may be a different other people can do it on the computer and that works for them.
Yeah.
And then another thing is that prayer and meditation really
Mm-hmm.
works for me. And just pouring out my heart to God and knowing that I'm being heard and feel that I'm being heard. And then also physically, I know sometimes going for a walk and talking it over with myself and being out in nature really helps me. And so what I want to encourage everyone to do is to do what you can do for self care to make you feel better, along with the processes and the guidelines that Sharika gave. And it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then, I also depend on my friends. I'll call a friend and say, "Hey, girl, my head ain't right at all, and I need to talk through some stuff. And I know that you have done this for me, and I pray that I've done it
Oh,
for you.
absolutely. You
Have
have.
someone remind you who you are.
I know that's
Who
right.
you are. It's like, oh, girl, oh, I know you must be tripping because you got this coaching thing on lock. I said,
Mm-hmm.
and so one time I was pumped up so much, I was like, well, dang, that is me.
Like, you show
Because
right. You
yeah,
show right. I had a
oh,
memory
okay.
lapse.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, girl, oh, okay. but you need those type of friends. And we could do a whole nother conversation on knowing who's in your
Oh,
circle and the
absolutely. And
different
it's so
kind of people
important.
and the different type of people you need in your circle, because you need a variety of people,
Right. Right.
because if you have all these encouragers but you don't have someone who say, wait a minute, your slip is hanging, girl.
Right.
I don't know, you're not doing no work on your business, you're not, and then I don't like those kind of conversations, but I know that they're necessary.
They are necessary. They are necessary. And one thing I want to jump back to for a second, Kim, is when we talk about fear and we talk about the strategies that we just did. One thing I think we should also address is, what if your fear is valid? What if you know that something unpleasant is going to happen once you face the fears because you've been there before? You know the pain, you know the discomfort, you know what's going to happen. And you're trying to you and one the two things happen. One, you want to avoid that. You don't want to experience that pain again. You don't want to experience that discomfort again. But two, how do you push through it too? Because let me tell you something, Kim. You and I have both been unemployed. And that was a very uncomfortable, unpleasant, painful. I felt embarrassed. I had all the emotions behind being unemployed, right?
Yes.
And if I had to face that again, I would probably freeze for a second because I'm like, God, do I really got to go through this again? Like, do we really got to do this? But there are some things you have to do in order to get to where you need to go. It may be uncomfortable. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier, Kim, is keeping that gratitude journal, keeping your miracle master list so that you can remember that even through the pain, even through the discomfort, even through the inconveniences, you were still kept. You still overcame because you're here right now about to go through something similar. But you know that you have the intestinal fortitude. You know that you have the spiritual fortitude. You know that God has never left you nor forsake you, so that He's still with you and carry you through that thing again. And you're going to come out better and stronger for it because nothing, I don't believe there's very little that happens in our lives that's accidental. There's
Right.
very little that happens in our lives that will not aid us into becoming the women that we need to be in order to achieve that next level in our lives.
Yeah.
And
One thing.
so,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Oh, I was just saying. And I know that during those times, if I would have to go back to something that is familiar, is like you said, remembering the wins, no matter how small. And I would contact people who've been through the situation too, and that usually helps.
Yeah.
That usually helps.
Yeah. So don't be afraid. Even I keep wanting to say don't be afraid. Don't let the fear overcome you because you know something bad is going to happen. Prepare yourself as much as possible. Keep your mind focused on what you do have and on the resources you do have. And then make sure that you have your power circle, your friend circle around you to help support you through this process as well. So whether or not that fear is imagined, is possible, but it hadn't happened, or if that fear has happened, so you know that it can happen, you still have everything you need within you and around you to push through that in spite of that fearful thing being present.
Yes, yes. And with God, all things are possible. That's what we have
Absolutely.
to remember. Well, I've
Absolutely.
enjoyed this conversation so much.
I have to.
Fear is
Thank you.
something that, I deal with as a coach, you deal with as a coach. And it's we can do it. We can do anything. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave you to give some final words.
Yes. My final words are just simply going to be, don't let the fear of things around you trump the power that's within you. I believe that every single person that is listening to our voice right now is a powerful human being. Why? Because you have the Spirit of God within you. So remember that power, lean on that power, rely on that power, and don't let anything outside of you overcome that. So, again, thank you guys for tuning in for this episode of Soulful Conversation. I hope that something was said or done during this episode that has empowered you to go out and live your best life, to go out and live on purpose. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment below. If not, we will see you guys next time. Bye bye.